Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
And what's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime as we work our way through this new studio. We fixed the lighting, tried to make it a little less distracting, and as we are working on this software as well. And our best guest, Phil Ramos, taking a very important call. That's what I love about podcasting. The unexpected always happens. The big question today, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Where is Danelo Calvacante? That is the $64,000, really the $25,000 question, since the reward was just raised. He was just convicted to life in prison without parole for stabbing his girlfriend 38 times in front of her two young children, a real savage. And he's been on the loose, and authorities do not know apparently what is going on. He escaped the perimeter and appears to be far gone at this point. We're going to discuss it all. So, best guest today, you've seen all three. You're not going to get a better panel on this anywhere. Detective Phil Ramos, he is a retired senior homicide detective with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. 35 years of service, the last 15 years, as I mentioned, in homicide. 12 years undercover in narcotics. He infiltrated the Cuban mob. He was there for Tupac, as I'm told to pronounce it, Tupac's autopsy. He verified that he's alive. He's a 3-time Officer of the Year. He's a native Las Vegan. The list goes on. These guys all have long resumes. I'm going to have to give Ramos a little more time than I give Dreek right now. Robin Dreek is a best-selling author, a professional speaker, a trainer, an executive coach, a podcast host, a Marine Corps officer, and a retired FBI special agent. He was the chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. He knows exactly what's going on inside Danelo Calvacante's mind. He's going to tell us all about it. He's the author of The Code of Trust, and It's Not All About Me, and Forging Trust is his YouTube channel. Jeff Wood, retired FBI special agent out of Boston. Agent Wood focused on gangs and gang violence and is a seasoned investigator. Interestingly enough, both of Jeff's parents served in Vietnam. Thank you for both their services, as well as Robin's and Jeff's himself. They met in Vietnam, where they eventually had little baby Jeff. Jeff also, as I said, proudly served in the United States military already. The chat in full effect. People saying hi to Space Coast. Let me tell you something. I have a whole new respect for Space Coast. This software is insane. How he understands how any of this works, I will never have any idea. But he is running the show behind the scenes, and it is a team effort. We thank him greatly, as well as the COE, who's on kid duty today. Before we get cracking, it was, I guess it was 22 years ago, if I'm doing the math correctly. I was on my way to 3 World Financial Center where I was working at the time. Obviously, it is 9/11. We got 3 American heroes here. Just a quick around the horn. Robin Dreek, what does this somber day mean to you, Robin Dreek?
I was just talking to my friend who I was in the FBI with on that very day, 5 blocks away when the towers got hit, because I was in Manhattan during the entire thing. And I had an engine that hit the South Tower from the plane that hit the South Tower, landed like 30 feet from my car. So what's it mean to me? Boy, it was a very patriotic time in our country. And it was a very different time. And the way we all came together in every organization, everywhere, it was just ridiculous in a very positive way. So that's what it means to me, is coming together.
And Robin was actually talking. You were basically at ground zero when it happened. Is that right, Robin?
Yep, 100%, right there the entire time.
And you got catch up here. 9/11, never forget. Phil Ramos, I assume you were in Las Vegas on that fateful day. What were you doing? What do you remember about 9/11?
It's crazy because I was actually on a plane just backing out of the airport that was headed for New York. We were going back there to do an interview, and the pilot said, "There's been a national emergency. We're going back to the gate. Get out of the airport as soon as you can." And man, the phones just started ringing, and I thought, how could anything like this be happening in this day and age? And it was just mind-boggling what had happened, and the fact that we were on a plane that was going to go to New York that day was kind of crazy itself.
Mm. Jeff Wood, I hope you guys are hearing me all right. I'm kind of talking. It is a new microphone. I see some comments, so we're gonna work out all the kinks. This is top of the line mic here, but if you don't talk directly into it in the perfect angle, could be problematic. So let me know how it is as we continue on. Jeff Wood, both your parents served courageously in Vietnam. You served 9/11. Where were you? What were you doing that day?
Well, I got to be honest, it was a very unique day for me because the week before I was supposed to be on one of the planes out of Boston to LA. And that Thursday, the person I was supposed to testify against in LA waived everything. So I never got on those planes. So for me, that day ended up, as Robin said, seeing everything come together, everybody work together. I ended up working the airport and interviewing all the family members who had put families on those planes to fly out to LA that day. So, it's just a very somber day for all of us, especially considering, I don't know if what the Las Vegas PD's policy is, but FBI policy, we fly armed. So I also always wonder, what would have happened, because typically we're taught, just keep calm, don't do a whole lot. But seeing the difference, how would I have responded? It, could have prevented one of the planes going to the towers. Is one of those very interesting things that runs through my mind every time we come around to this time of the year.
Dreams
I
about
did
that
not
many
know
times.
that. So yeah, so Jeff, federal agents, you and Robin Dreek are allowed to fly with your firearm on your side. So if thank God you weren't on the plane, but if you were, things could have ended differently potentially, right, Jeff?
Well, potentially. I mean, we are taught, try not to, unless things go really bad, we don't interfere with things going on the plane. But in this case, I don't think we've ever seen up to this point where when you go back in the 80s, 70s, when you had some hijackings, people weren't killed during the flight. They were killed sitting on the tarmac. So, I think that once you saw everything ratchet to that point, obviously I would have done something and would have been in time to keep people from making making entrance to the cockpit. Because back then we didn't have those secured doors where, it would have slowed them down. So, I mean, very different perspective for all of us that day, because we were all touched somehow or another.
And I never would have thought, and Robin Dreek just alluded to this, that 22 years later, that we'd be divided the way we are as a nation, because back on 9/11, everyone came together, everyone was flying flags. Let's get some of that back here again, America. But enough pontificating for me. On to a crazy story. Of course, our thoughts are with all the victims of 9/11, and sadly, I knew a few of them. Hard to believe it was 22 years ago. It's crazy how time flies. Little kids now, grown-ups. That's how crazy it is. So 12 days on the run. This guy, Danelo Calvacante, Robin Dreek, he escaped from the Chester County Prison 12 days ago. Initially, there was a 2-mile radius, and now that perimeter has been completely busted apart. They are putting on, Pennsylvania State Police has taken over this investigation, and they're putting on, a brave face, kind of saying this is SOP, but behind the scenes, all hell is breaking loose. Are you stunned that this guy has made it this long?
Stunned? No, probably not stunned. Disappointed is a better word, I think, for me on this one at this point. But when you look at him, because I've mentioned on your show numerous times, behaviorally, you look at this guy's life arc, and Jeff as a gang guy, and Phil, same thing. This guy's life arc started a long time ago in Brazilian gangs, which are extremely violent. I was looking at the research on this. Mortality rate is 24% dying by violence by in their lifetime, and their life expectancy is only hitting the 50s, or early 40s sometimes too. So I mean, the violence that he's been exposed to at a young age, the resourcefulness, because a lot of these people were forced into gangs down in Brazil because of extreme poverty. So his ability to suffer, his ability to improvise, his ability to take advantage of every single situation and capitalize on it. He had a lot of life reps before he even escaped. And when you saw the way he escaped by scaling that building, you're like, this is a guy that has a lot of reps and looking for vulnerabilities in systems, organizations, and people in order to take advantage of them. So he exercised a lot of patience. He's methodical, I think, about how he probably found that vehicle. I don't think, and so yeah, was it surprising? More disappointing, I think. And as they're shifting, they need to take account of these things. So what he's doing right now, I'm sorry, I'm going on a little bit about this, 'cause I was just talking about it all day. His data points, he's given us data points at least. I'm surprised he's actually reaching back and contacting previous people, and because his only vulnerability he's actually displaying right now, at least from my behaviors side, is he's reaching to people he can't trust because he's been turned in by people that he thought might have been trustworthy. And so if he's going to be caught at this point, I think it's going to be by someone that turns him in he didn't think was going to turn him in. But yeah, so that's my quick 2 cents on him.
And Jeff Wood's freaking out because his dog's barking. What he doesn't know is you can't get through an STS episode
We
without
got
a dog barking. So happy to hear that. Phil Ramos, to you. Same question. Jeff, I was just saying there cannot be a Surviving the Surviving episode without a dog barking. We're dog friendly here. So what kind of pup is that? I feel like you have a Doberman or 3.
No, I've got 2 rescue dogs. That one is my lab mix, or that's what they called it when I rescued him. But I see some pit in him, and he's letting me know he had to go out. So I'm the only one here. So
for some reason, every time Robin Dreek is on, we get the hotness comments here. So chalk that up to Wood, Dreek, and Ramos all on the same panel. Phil, to you, same question here, and then we'll get into the details of all this. Are you surprised that this guy has made it 12 days on the run in this part of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I am surprised. I'm not very surprised because the point was very well made. This guy is a hardcore criminal from hardcore prisons. And you can bet every prisoner that's watched that videotape is practicing his Spider-Man crawl up that hallway right there. And they're saying, I should have thought of that myself. But that takes quite an effort to get into the position that he was in and defy gravity the way he did. But we've spoken about this in the past. These prisoners from these, I hate to use the term third world countries, but they are some tough people, and they are resilient, and they can get by on very little water and no food for a long time. And then you got to look at the environment that he's in. The thick forest type environment that he's in, and the shrubbery. He could hide and sit in one place for hours, and unless the cops have dogs with them, they could walk right by him and not see him. I was watching some of that video footage. I'm thinking, how in the world are you going to spot this guy with all that kind of foliage everywhere? And he's pretty resilient. So the fact that he reached out to some coworkers, and thank God they called the cops and said, hey, I don't want to have anything to do with this guy, but this is what he looks like now. You saw that drastic change in his appearance. He had access to be able to shave and put on some different kind of clothing. But the fact that he's still wearing the prison pants, this guy's a survivor, man. And it very well could be a few days before they catch up to him. I'm sure they will, but it could be a few more days.
And Phil Ramos, you mentioned he has a new appearance. He shaved that beard of his. You think he did that out in the woods somewhere? Or you think he got into someone's house and borrowed a razor and just shaved that right off? Because we know he's broken into a couple of homes. They believe that to be the case.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. Like I said, he can come and go as he pleases, it would seem. But hiding out in somebody's backyard and waiting for somebody to leave, get inside the house and not make too much of a presence known so that people call the cops. But yeah, I think that's exactly what it did. I think he got in somebody's house and had access to a razor. I don't know why he didn't have any better luck with the changing his clothes, but the fact that he was able to get that van and travel so far before it ran out of gas, you would think, well, he doesn't have any money unless he's found some money in somebody's house. And so why didn't he gas up? Well, he's not going to take that chance of being seen in public. That's why he left the van where he left it, so that nobody would see him.
And people are talking about that climb, and Phil mentioned it. That was not the easiest climb, and he made it look super easy. Just crab walk right out of there. I don't think there's any chance in hell I would be doing that at my age today. Maybe Jeff Wood or Robin Dreek. I don't know. But Jeff, you think you think this guy is a survivalist? By training in any way? He's just so adept at avoiding these police with as we were told, was a 2-mile radius at one point.
Well, I wouldn't say that he's necessarily had that kind of training, but you look at his background, and Robin already touched on it. He grew up in Brazil, which is an extremely violent country. There is a ton of crime in Brazil. It's not safe. He's in a gang that levels up a lot of different skills he picks up from the gang in the sense of his criminality and his ability to think. When I've talked to other people or I'm teaching, one thing I've always noticed is that you can't send us, most of the population of the United States doesn't think like a criminal. When you're a criminal, you think completely different, and that's where we have to come in. He thinks like a criminal, so he's been trained his whole life by being a gang member, doing these violent crimes to avoid the police. So he knows, in that sense, of what he has to do to stay hidden, to survive on his own in certain aspects. Because when you look at third world nations, Central South American nations, you're growing up in an environment where you have to learn to survive on the bare minimum. You don't grow up unless you're in that top 10% of the population. You're not growing up with things. So, okay, people say, "Oh, I could never do that." Well, when you've grown up doing that, it's very second nature. And so, to me, as Robin said, and Phil said, he knows what he needs to do to stay hidden. Eventually, he'll get caught. I mean, it will happen because people aren't helping him. And when you're on the run, you need, unless you have a ton of money, you need the support of family, friends. You need some sort of support to stay off the grid. And he doesn't have that. So eventually, he's going to slip up and get caught.
The question is, how eventually will that be? Hey, Mona says, Jeff could crab walk. Look at those guns right there. He's got that nice polished looking haircut. Robin Dreek, this is an interesting stat I came across. Most escaped prisoners are captured within 24 hours, and most of them within a 2-mile radius of wherever they're escaping from. Now, Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens, if you don't know the name, he is with the Pennsylvania State Police. He is the one giving these press conferences every day. There was one at 2 p.m. today earlier, and he said that he believes that the suspect is still in Chester County. Robin Dreek, do you think that Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens really believes what he is saying at this point, or are they just trying to put on a brave face? Because we know he got away from that, outside the perimeter now and drove, I think it was 25 miles north. So if he's still in the county, he's in the very northern line of that county. But is it possible he's gone?
Everything's possible when you're doing these things. Every time I've predicted what I thought was going to happen, it's never happened that way. So I never predict anything anymore with these. But I I was watching that press conference live as I was on News Nation at the time, and without a doubt, the colonel believes what he's saying. And I think what they also have is he was alluding to it when he was speaking. There's other data points they're getting in that they're not particularly sharing with us and the press and everyone else. And that is, I think, I mean, I'm hypothesizing here. There's most likely going to be some cell phone data traffic that they're able to communicate if he's picked up a burner phone, or he stole a burner phone, or he grabbed one out of the van. There's something that we're not hearing when the state police is speaking, that they have another data point that they're not completely sharing, that they're pretty convinced about his current location, or at least that area. What I find the most challenging in this one, you say most are caught that fast afterwards. One, they've never tried to catch anyone like this. As Jeff was saying, this guy has a lifelong reps of doing this from Brazil. This is second nature to him. The other thing too is his network of people he's reaching out for. This is why it's going to be really tricky, I think, because I think it's really interesting that they just kicked his sister out of the country for not cooperating, and she's an overstay. Most likely his network he's going to be reaching out for besides his coworkers. But if he's got anyone else in this network of family and friends, especially since he came to Puerto Rico somehow, got fake ID somehow, and got into our country somehow, he's got resources. Most likely these resources are overstays as well, or not here entered illegally. The likelihood they're going to give him up and be arrested and thrown out of the country is pretty low also. So I think he's going to be trying to tap into all these different resources, which is also a network of people that these other escapees might not have had.
Jeff, back to you, and then we'll get back to Phil from J. Thomas Reset, who's always in the chat. Shout out to Jay. I told you all before, should have sent rangers into the woods. This guy's a soldier. City boy cops are naive and incompetent, not trained for this. Sad but true. Phil Ramos may have a word or two with you. But Jeff Wood, a lot of people have been saying, well, they should have sent in special operations, military forces. Is that just overkill with something like this? Or is that something that should have been considered?
Everyone wants to say whatever they want to say. You look at a lot of our police officers today, a lot of our law enforcement across the board, federal and state, a lot come with military backgrounds, right? So don't think that some of the people going out there aren't part of tactical teams. When I was on the FBI SWAT team, I'm an Army Airborne Ranger guy. We had Marine Force Recon guy. We have everyone. So people have some of this training. Just to say our police officers are city cops and don't know how to do this is not accurate. You can't say that today. We've hired so many people who come out of the military into law enforcement that's just not fair to say. I would also say again, or in this aspect, is you've got the military, you got law enforcement, two totally different organizations. And there's a reason why we don't allow the military to come in and do law enforcement operations in this country. They're not trained for it. It's totally different. Our deadly force policies are completely different. And there are rules about using military and laws about using the military on civilian type purposes like this. So no, I completely disagree with the fact of bringing in special operators. Not saying they couldn't go and do a hunt, but it's not legal. It's not, you wouldn't find it under the Constitution of the United States.
And we've got U.S. Marshals, some of the best fugitive manhunters in the world, who I'm sure are working on this. Phil Ramos, questions coming in, one from Lucy Bell here. Should we assume he has no help? He tried to get help. We know that. He went to some accomplice's house. They just happened to not be home. Why would you rule out possible gang affiliation assistance for him, Phil Ramos? And then Jeff can chime in on this because Jeff is a gang expert. But Phil, maybe he is getting help. We just don't know about it right now. We're going to talk about his sister in a little bit.
Yeah, it's possible. I think if he'd been getting help the way that we think that he might be getting it, he'd be a lot farther away than he is. What he's doing right now, he's done on his own. I'm very certain of that. just because of the fact that this guy knows what he's doing. Not that he's trained to be a survivalist or anything like that, but that point was made just a little bit ago that he comes from a background where you have to survive in something like that, or you're just going to die. That's all there is to it. So he's pretty well versed in those types of techniques. If he was getting any kind of help, I believe that the cops would be aware of that simply by the holdback that is occurring right now. Like we had mentioned, there's always going to be a certain amount of holdback. They're not going to tell you everything that they know. They absolutely can't. They can't tip them off that way. So it's going to be, if he's getting help, it's minimal. Like the two coworkers that he tried to reach out to, and they called the cops right away. Hopefully that's what's going on. I don't know that the gang mentality is going to help him in this particular instance, because who knows what kind of gang associations he made while he was in prison. That's a whole different sect that he's coming from, and I don't think that gangs would be willing to help this guy at this particular point if he wasn't a member of MS-13 or somebody like that. The loyalty isn't there for people that come from different parts of the world that you would think, well, if he's a gang member, all the gang members are going to jump up and help him. That's not the case. And I think that whatever help he may be getting, and I say maybe, is minimal. But it's just a matter of time. I agree, it's just a matter of time. But going back to why can't we use the military? Well, there's lots of reasons why we can't use the military in the Constitution. You just can't call SEAL Team 6 and say, hey, jump in a couple of Blackhawks and go find this guy. It doesn't work that way.
Robin Dreek from Yala. Doesn't the FBI get involved when it comes to inmate escapes? Is the FBI, I know the Pennsylvania State Police, they're the lead investigative team on this, but is the FBI involved as far as you know? And what would they be doing differently than the Pennsylvania State Police?
So like in most things, the FBI is a resource that can be utilized by whoever is lead. Marshals generally do this. I like that they brought CBP in on this because these guys are used to finding people who don't want to be found. But no, we generally bring our resources to bear. Like in this case, any kind of cell phone tracking. I think profiling his background and digging deep on that is important to kind of reverse his flow into the country. Might be his way of trying to escape from the country and all the people and resources used along the way. So kind of bringing those resources to bear as well. But also any kind of tech things they're going to do, because I know they put a lot of technology on the ground, and technology will fail you. But also when it comes to interviewing, I think right now, as the state police was alluding to during the press conference, they're retooling what they're doing, meaning that instead of relying heavily on technology, I think they're putting a lot of feet on the ground to talk to a lot of people that have been associated with some of these people in the past, to kind of try to put the tendrils out there to see if you get any little pings here and here with people. And that takes a lot of people to interview.
So Jeff Wood, it started off as a 2-mile radius, square mile radius that they were searching. It expanded to an 8 square mile area. And now he he stole this van over the weekend, turned up 20 miles away where he left the van. Of course, where he was and where he continues to be, I believe, is still a very heavy rural wooded area. What do you think, since you're an expert with gangs and he is Brazilian, and I don't know, you might know what gang he's a member of, I don't, but what kind of skills and training, if any, did he get from being a gang member that he's using right now as he's on the lam?
Well, I want to make a couple of things. One, I agree with Phil in regards to gang involvement and assistance. He was a gang member in Brazil. We don't know. There's nothing to say if he joined a gang here in Pennsylvania where he was and when he killed his girlfriend. And we don't know if that Brazilian gang has a chapter or a clique here in that area. So unless he joins a new gang, as Phil said, other gangs aren't just going to help you willy-nilly just because you're a gang member. Gang members hate other gang members because they have different ideologies. We also have to remember he was a state prisoner. Yes, the FBI is going to provide assistance, and the marshals and other federal agencies we're a resource at this point. If he had been a federal inmate, yes, we could have taken more of a lead at that point. But this is a state guy, so we're not going to just say, "Hey, we're here to take over and take charge." We're going to be here to say, "What assistance do you need from us?" And then three, to answer your specific question, the gangs aren't necessarily. People do have a misconception. Gangs aren't just part of the inner city or cities. Gangs are in all different kinds of communities. Gangs come from different communities, but typically there isn't training in gangs on, oh, this is what you want to do in here. We have seen within the last 20 years where gang members send people who will join gangs or could be part of gangs will join the military to receive training so that way they can use that training to further their criminal enterprise when they get out. But I don't see the gangs doing a lot of training in that sense. So again, it comes back to where he lived, where he grew up, and the survival skills he kind of learns just to survive in that poverty-stricken area he grew up in, the area where crime is rampant. And if you're not learning how to survive in that area, you're not going to survive, period, right? You're going to have to learn, what do I need to do? So he's got that kind of mentality. I will do what it takes to survive and do what I need to do. So that means, as he said, you learn to ignore the hunger. You grew up in that poverty-stricken area. You're going to be hungry. You're going to learn to say, okay, that's a muddy puddle, but I'll drink from that muddy puddle to get the water I need to quench my thirst, whether I get sick or not. Where a lot of people go, I can't do that. I can't do that. I won't do that. So he will do what it takes to survive because that's where he grew up. And anyone who's traveled overseas, our military, you go to Afghanistan, you go to Pakistan, you go to El Salvador, you see these places, they are hard people. I can remember I landed in Afghanistan, my first night out with the 10th Special Forces group that I was working with, and we went in and we hit this hotel that we knew where they were bringing, the owner of the hotel was bringing in Taliban guys, Al Qaeda guys to set up shop. So we're out there. The SF guys, the FBI guys are all working together. We've got the nice warm underwear, jackets, boots. These guys have wrapped in a little blanket in sandals and pajama thin pants talking to us in 0-degree weather. And I mean, I was cold with all my gear on, and they're just standing there sucking. It goes to show that mentality, that hardness, that survivability. I will do what I need to do to survive. And that's what's the training he has in that sense. It's not, I gave him training as if an SF guy comes in and trains people. It's not like that. This is on the world. What do I have to do to be hard and survive these conditions?
Interesting point right there. Phil Ramos, to you. Interesting question here from Raul Thomas. He's fluent in Spanish and Portuguese, but struggles with English. How can searchers take advantage of this fact? Is there anything that they can do? I mean, I'm not sure exactly what they could do, but anything rolling around that head of yours?
A language barrier isn't really a big deal for this guy right now. I'm sure he knows enough English to get by if he's having any contact with anybody. You really don't need to be fluent in English to continue your escapade when you're hiding in a jungle. So I don't think that that's going to be an advantage or a disadvantage one way or the other. What this guy is relying on is not his ability to speak English or speak Spanish, but his ability to survive. And he's doing that pretty well so far. Like everybody said, he can put up with a heck of a lot more than most people in prison do. And going back to that one issue about has he learned anything being in a gang? Not necessarily. I mean, that you're in a gang, but a lot of education comes from other prisoners. They work on how to hide weapons in your shoe and how to, if you're in a fight, how to gouge eyes and survival stuff like that. But I don't think language barrier for this guy is going to be advantageous to him or disadvantage for the cops.
And Phil Ramos, right back to you. So state police came out today. They said that Danelo Calvacante's sister, her name is Eleni. She was a housekeeper in the area. She did not succeed in helping Cavalcante, they said, but she also declined to cooperate with authorities. She's got, I guess, what they call an overstay on her visa here. So they have her currently in the custody of ICE. She's facing deportation. Some say that she is deathly afraid of her brother, and that's why she's not cooperating. But Detective Ramos, if you were on this case right now, how would you be leaning on her, if at all? What would you be asking her?
I'd be asking her how good is he at living off of the plants and vegetation that he's in. But this could also be a presentation that the cops are giving to make Cavalcante think that his family's not going to help him out. Like they had his mom's voice coming out of the helicopters on the first couple of days. They could be using that to see if he's got a weak point when it comes to his family. I don't think that what they're saying necessarily is to make her look bad, but to prey on to get to his feelings a little bit. They want him to think that they're putting pressure on his sister, and how far is his loyalties going to go? Is he going to? I mean, he's got to know he's not going to get away with it. How long does he want to keep running? So the whole thing with the sister, I think, may be a little bit of a disguise for the cops to use to try and get to him. See if his family is one of those weaknesses that may cause him to say, hey, I'm not going to get away with this. So just go turn yourself into the first cop that you see. I doubt it, but it could be what they're trying to do.
That's interesting. By the way, these are new shots of him caught on a doorbell camera. And there's the tip line right there, 717-562-2987, 562-2987, 717 area code. Police have upped the reward to $25,000. And we're going to talk about some vigilante justice that some people are trying to execute. But before we get there, Robin Dreek. So now they are facing the real, the reality of a much wider swath of a search area. Again, it was 2 miles to 8 miles. But now authorities are admitting they don't really know where he is. So what do you do tactically, do you think? He got through basically 400 police officers. Tactically, what do you do now to try to get a net around this guy?
Yeah, I don't think the net's going to be technology. I think it's going to be a human net. When technology fails, you got to go back to interviewing, and it's just whatever you can glean is like what, as you just asked Phil, what do you talk to the sister about? What kind of things are you trying to learn? You're trying to learn every human being he's even thought of in his life, and that's who you're reaching out to touch. And you got to talk to absolutely everyone. And just talking about the language, whether speaking Spanish and Portuguese and lack of English is a help or a hindrance, it's one more thing you can do. You can reach out to those communities in that area, to see if they've ever heard of them. Anyone who knows if any heard of them. So that's what you're doing at this point. You're chasing down, just like, we just talked about 9/11 beginning of this. I had lead number 2. And lead number 2 was person saw a plane flying down the Hudson River at a low altitude. That was lead number 2 for the World Trade Center investigation. So, and what's that mean? Every single tip you investigate, you shake down. And I know, we've talked about this when I was on with Phil before. It's like you go with every single lead you get. And so you have to create them at this point. And it's that 6 degrees of separation that Kevin Bacon analogy people use. Someone who knows someone, and you're going to find it. And you just have to keep digging and bringing all those resources. So I think it's going to be a human intelligence net that they're forming around him, hopefully, at this point as well.
Miss B says, I am Brazilian. I've been following the U.S. news since he escaped prison. As far as I know about him through research, he is not a gang member, although we heard he is. In Brazil, at least, he's not a gang member, she says. He killed a man at a bar and left to the U.S. He does have a warrant for a murder there. AM here says, if it was winter, this guy wouldn't survive. He has the weather on his side. I think we're giving him too much credit. Jeff Wood, are we giving him too much credit right now?
I don't think we're giving him too much credit. I mean, last time I remember being in, I mean, I grew up in that area outside of Philadelphia. You've got a, it's a wooded terrain. I know that it gets very thick. So you get under a bush and you don't move when people are searching for you. They're not going to see you. In my training, I'm sure Robin's seen it in the military. I have, as long as you're still, I've had people like take a step over me, not step on me, and never knew I was there. So I mean, that's not that's not giving him credit. That's he's being good, and the nights are getting cool, but they're not freezing yet. So yes, if it was colder, uh, hypothermia could set in. Maybe he doesn't survive a night, but it's not that cold yet. So, I mean, right now, he's doing what he needs to do to evade capture, and he's doing it well. And as Robin pointed out, Phil's pointed out, I don't think he's had a lot of help yet. I think he's trying to find a help. Most people are looking when they're on the run, are looking for those fugitives are looking for who can help them, give them money, get them in the trunk of a car so they can drive them further away. Um, so right now, the police, law enforcement as a whole, they're trying to talk to every single person that could have some kind of knowledge of him where they can get some more tips and develop more leads, because at this point it's going to be either luck, he walks into a store to try and get something and the person recognizes him, and I'll say this, working this kind of stuff for a long time, people are seeing it, but they don't necessarily recognize him when he walks in. So it's going to be a lot of luck that somebody does recognize him when they see him, or he's spotted by a police officer who recognizes him. Right? It's not one of these things where he walks in the store and everyone goes, "Oh, that's the guy." I mean, yes, it's on our minds, but people are busy. You get people who pick up their phone, they're in the stores, here we are, blah, 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 right? They're not paying attention. So he can blend in and just not be seen if he gets some new clothes. I mean, if he's wearing the 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 prison pants still, that would be a bigger clue. But we've already seen he's got a sweatshirt on. I mean, he's getting things that he's surviving on that's going to make it hard. And you can go back and look at some of our fugitives over the last few years. Those two guys in New York, how they were gone for a lot longer than 24 hours, and they had help getting out from the woman who worked in the prison. So I mean,
Right.
so it it will take a lot of work, but it will be done. He will be caught.
He's a small guy too. It's easier to hide. I mean, he's
He's
what do you
5
say?
foot.
He's
He's
5 foot,
5
100
foot.
pounds, soaking wet.
Yeah, 120 pounds. As I like to say, he's a UFC flyweight, and he doesn't have to cut weight to get there. STS, Chief of Everything, the COE is chiming in. Hi, all. Joel was panicked with the new studio. The new studio scared you all off. So panicked that I can't read anymore. Glad to see everyone here tonight. The last 3 or 4 days is taken 30 years off of my life. I do not like change, and there's been a lot of change. So if I just don't ever show up again, you know what happened. It was the whole new studio and new software. That's what did me in. But hopefully I will get through this, and hopefully Danelo Calvacante will not get through his ordeal. To you, Phil Ramos. So Saturday night, he kind of raised the stakes. He stole a 2024 Transit. It was a van. It was 3/4 of a mile from the search perimeter. He traveled about 25 miles north to a place called East Pikeland Township. Police then informed the public that the van owners left the keys inside the van. Phil Ramos, how frustrating must that be for investigators? Such a kind of silly thing to do when there's a manhunt going on. What would you be telling the public right now?
Well, just exactly that. Don't do stupid things, but that is much more common than you would expect. Those of us with law enforcement backgrounds, we never leave our keys and that we never leave our doors unlocked. It's just stuff that you learn over time not to do. But for the most part, especially in small rural communities, it's not a big deal to leave your keys in your car or leave your doors unlocked. I think the fact that he hasn't gone high profile, and let's just pray to God that he doesn't kick in somebody's door and start taking little kids hostage and families hostage to try and get his way out of this. That he's going to keep as low a profile as he can so that he can maintain that ability to move. I'm sure that he's moving at night, he's and laying low during the day for that very reason. So um, people need to just, we all talk about situational awareness and know what's going on around you, but what do you look for in this situation? You can't expect um, everyday citizens to be walking around looking for this guy. And let's hope that this vigilante justice thing doesn't kick off, because that could just really get ugly for a lot of people. Let the cops do what the cops do, and
Well,
they're
Phil,
going to catch.
yeah, Phil, let's go there since you just brought it up. So they raised the reward to $25,000, and of course, you see people in jeeps with long arm rifles now hunting for this guy. Phil Ramos, you're the voice of reason. What would you say to these people?
Don't do it. Don't be stupid. It's not worth uh, you ending up being charged with manslaughter because you thought this was the guy, and he's going into a store to get something, and you are going to take the law into your own hands. That's not going to work out for anybody. They can try and justify it as much as they can, but these guys running around in the back of pickup trucks with rifles, and they see something moving in the woods and take a shot at it. That's just stupid. That's just plain stupid. Don't do that. Let the cops do it themselves, because you don't know what you're up against. You don't know what's going to happen, and you could easily, very easily, overreact to a very docile sanitary situation. And if you start using deadly force on something like that, you're the one that's going to end up in prison, and he's still going to be running.
Don't forget, it's hunting season now. You
Yep,
got
honey,
Wait.
someone pointed that out. So hunters are going to be out there, and they might come across him. By the way, Stel Veary has never said a more true statement. Anxiety is exhausting. Had it with this
Yep.
studio. It is tiring. So I'm going to go home after this, get a good night's sleep. Although we're doing one more show tonight, by the way, 7 p.m. on Alec Murdoch, the very latest. So Robin Dreek, he tried to contact another acquaintance too. Both of those attempts failed. When he was at the second acquaintance's home, a female actually spotted him, recognized him, called police, and somehow he got away. The colonel here with the Pennsylvania State Police said he is absolutely looking for support. He needs that support. He doesn't have it right now. And I found that interesting. So back to your expertise, he is, everyone on this panel has said he's going to get caught, right? So he's sort of he's being circled slowly but surely, and he's a very violent individual. How does this up the stakes in terms of what kind of harm he could cause to an individual if he feels threatened and feels like he's going to be sent back to prison for life? Is he capable of anything?
And that's the big question right there. What's he capable of? Right now, he's in hunter gatherer mode, as I call it, because that's exactly what he's doing. He's in survival hunter gatherer mode. Thankfully, he hasn't done exactly that and taken hostages yet, because I don't believe he's going to go back to prison. Unless they capture him in his sleep or something, because it's it's going to be hard because he's that committed to staying free and doing whatever it takes. Hopefully, the data points we've seen from him, he is not trying to be violent. He's not using it as a resort yet, but because he has it part of his life arc, it is extremely possible he will. So we just have to hope he doesn't, and we keep doing due diligence by interviewing as many people as possible around him. And and everyone's been hitting on it so far, and the law enforcement keeps saying it, state police does, is stay vigilant. Well, what's vigilant mean? I'm going to give everyone a really simple tip to be vigilant. Stop multitasking. Jeff did this at the beginning too. When you leave your home, take 15 seconds, put your cell phone down, put everything down. When you're walking out your home, be present. Just take it all in. Enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the clouds, enjoy whatever it is. Put everything down, observe what is. Then you go about. When you come home, do not be multitasking when you go home. Just as you park that car, just as you stop, be present. Stop multitasking. Take in the environment and say to yourself, is it all the same or not? And then you take action. Then if something looks amiss, then you say, that's interesting. Maybe I should call someone. Maybe I should get my opinion if someone was with me. Did you see that before? That looks a little bit different. That's what being vigilant is. It means stop multitasking. We are biologically and chemically incapable, no matter what anyone will tell you. You cannot multitask. Our brains cannot do it. Be present. That's how you stay vigilant. Look for the differences in your life. Look for the differences in the environment around you. And when you see talking about getting rid of anxiety, it's horrible for our mental health. It destroys it destroys everything about us. The way 9/11 is a great example. Everyone was so fearful. What's next? What's next? What's next? The thing we can do to let go of that is take an action that you say, okay, this can help. And this is be present, take that action. The other thing too is one of the things that people came up with, should I still be fearful? Well, let's look at what he's doing. He's not targeting individuals. He's targeting opportunities. Do not create an opportunity and do not be someone from his past. If you're someone from his past, just get ready to make a phone call to law enforcement right away. So that's where you can make those efforts and take some action.
Robin, perhaps the best question of the evening from C-Star. It's not up there right now, but why do FBI agents retire so young? Can you answer that for us?
Oh my God, it's the easiest question in the world. Because we can. So when we retire, we have the ability, if you have at least 20 years in the FBI, plus I had 9 years in Marine Corps before that, and you can retire at 50 because that's a minimum retirement age for federal law enforcement. And you can take home roughly the same salary. I mean, I took a slight pay cut. You're literally start working for nothing if you stay in. It means you have to really, really love what you're doing to keep doing it. But I'll tell you, after a lifetime of working in New York City and then the nightmare of headquarters and everything else, no, I was ready.
That was it. That's
That
all
was
she
it.
wrote. Jeff Wood, back to you. So I don't know in your research, because we keep hearing mixed reports here, but I have heard reported multiple times that he is in fact a member of a gang. So let's set the record straight. I don't know. Have you heard otherwise?
I haven't heard otherwise. Everyone thinks that once we're we're FBI, that we still have access to everything we did before. We don't. I mean, so a lot of our research now is done like everyone else's on Google, all these different things, right? So you get on the computer, you start researching. Yes, we can sometimes tap into close friends, but you got to remember, for us, after 20 years, most of our friends are also retiring. So, people still in the bureau, who are you? I don't know you, right? So my research is just like everyone else's, and everything I've seen says he was a member of a gang in Brazil. Maybe it's wrong. I don't know, but what we have suggests he was a gang member, and that's what I'm going to go with at this time.
And got a little tiny echo in the ear.
I hear
which
echo.
Is why, time we're going to try to fix that up here. That is the challenges of new software going on. Phil Ramos, to you. The church on Sunday in this Nantmeal township, they locked their doors, and the pastor there, Dennis Keene, said it was a really unusual move, just taken for safety precautions. Should schools and churches, because the first couple of days I know schools were closed. I don't know if they are continuing to shutter the school system, but in your opinion, at this point, should schools and churches, places of worship, other places where people go to convene, should they be closed right now?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we need to be living in fear because of this guy. There's no indication that he's going to try and do something drastic like. Um, but you don't know. I mean, at what point do you give up your freedom and your liberties um, to to this guy because he hasn't been caught yet? One of the best points that we've made here is just be aware of your surroundings. If you see something doesn't look right or doesn't feel right, be aware of it and react accordingly. I don't think we need to go into any kind of lockdown because of this. It instills fear that doesn't need to be done, and it just makes people think that what what are they not telling us if we're locking our doors and keeping kids home from school? What's going on that we don't know about? I don't think that's necessary. I certainly don't think we're at that point at all.
Analytic Blarney AB, none of us would ever be able to listen to these streams if we were fully present, LOL. So don't do that. Don't get so present that you're not listening. Stay a little unpresent, if you will. John Miller, he's a really well-known former reporter in New York. He worked for the same station I did at Fox many years ago. Then he worked for the NYPD for a lot of years, and now he's one of the kind of chief intelligence correspondents for CNN. And he said that you have to remember, this is a quote here, that the stakes are different for Cavalcante. He's desperate and willing to really play his hardest, because if he goes back, he's going to a place where he's not getting out. Of course, he's talking about prison. And then in speaking about perimeters, he says that it does not consist of a solid line of cops in a giant square. Slipping through was a game of patience for Cavalcante, who is on the run literally for his life. Jeff Wood, can you talk a little bit about perimeters, setting up perimeters? Again, John Miller saying that it does not consist of, quote unquote, a solid line of cops in a giant square. So when you guys are setting up a net, if you will, how do you do it?
It's always going to depend on where you are, right? But whenever I've had to do something where I'm trying to set up a perimeter, it's always been, let's get some marked units and law enforcement on major highway access points, right? Let's get people to the bus station. Let's get people to the train station. Let's get people to the airport and try and get either posters up, get there trying to where people can access or enter those stations. So you've got eyes on and you're trying to scan everybody coming in to see if someone's going to try and catch a train. But exactly, how on earth do you get to go and say, okay, here's a 2-mile radius. So, isn't it pi r squared to get the area for a circle? So
I forget area. That's how crazy it is, but it might be. You might be right about that.
But the radius is 2 miles squared, so 2 times 2 is 4 times 3. You're now talking 12 point something a circle like this big, right? It's impossible to say, okay, I'm going to put a police officer every 50 feet where they can see and just stand there in this circle and look for somebody and then start walking in or out. The guy is smart. The guy knew how to escape. Let me crab walk out. Everyone always looks at barbed wire and concertina wire, razor wire, whatever it is. Oh, I would never go through that. That's just a deterrent. It's to slow you down. It will not stop you. If you want to get through it, you'll get through it. You'll get cut, clothes will get ripped, but you'll go through it. I'm sure Robin can attest in training, if he was an infantry guy, because I was, we're going through barbed wire all the time. And there'd be times if we're taking too long to cut it or we didn't have a Bangalore to blow it up, someone would be the guy who goes, all right, run over my back. And then he jumps on it to try and flatten it out. And everyone starts kind of going over him to get into something, right? So the guy's willing by himself to get through the concertina wire and get out. He has a head start. The prison guy in the guard tower never saw him. So we know when he got out, but he has a head start. He gets himself away, and now we're trying to find them, and it's that person is absolutely right. You can't, man. Okay, here's a road. Here's a main access point. Let's get somebody here. That's the perimeter. Trying to just put places where you think the guy will go through or go past that you can spot them. And when you're talking 12 plus miles like this, that's a lot of terrain. There's lots of woods. That area of Pennsylvania, like a lot of areas of Pennsylvania, once you get outside the city, that's thick, wooded area. It's not easy to maneuver through. So he'll take his time and move, and that's just part of the process and why it's so difficult when you've got somebody who's so committed to avoiding the police and is so committed to dealing with these adversities where, okay, he's not caring that it's uncomfortable. He's not caring that he's sleeping outside without a lot of cover with rocks in your back going, oh my God, all that pain that people just don't understand.
And Jeff, you said something really interesting like 3 answers ago. You said that during training, you would sometimes hide and people would pass right over you. They wouldn't know you were there. Is that something that you've got to be taught how to do? Or you think, if you had to guess, do you think there are instances over the last 12 days where law enforcement basically passed right by where he was? They just didn't see him.
It's, for me, a lot of it was, reading our manuals, training, but just trusting in the fact that I was in a good spot and not to move. I can't tell you how many times when I would be out, when I was in Panama in the jungle, I would find people just because they wouldn't trust where they were and they moved. And that movement is what catches your eye. So I remember one guy we captured, if he hadn't moved where, the movement and then the camouflage he was wearing didn't cover this part of his neck or this part of his hand, you didn't see like, okay, that looked out of place with the movement. You would have walked right past him 5 feet away. It's the discipline to say, don't move. And when I say that, it's the discipline of saying, trust in the fact that they haven't seen you and they're not going to see you. And the moment you move, that's when they'll see you. And it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a ton of discipline, and your heart's going to be beating through your chest. When people say, oh, I could see his heart beating through the shirt, you see it. You can, it's something that's like, it's the weirdest thing when you're dealing with a criminal, like, and they know you may have them. It's one of these things, you kind of see this. So you just have to lay down, hunker down, and just not move.
Kelly Wark says I could listen to Jeff Wood all day long. So could I. Robin Dreek, I want to get back to Ramos on something related to investigative stuff, but this is a very specific question from Jay. Robin, why not activate the Google Earth satellite as it is now used in the Netherlands to track criminals using GPS and personal fingerprinting? I think even facial fingerprinting. Why not more technology, Robin Dreek? You're a counterintelligence guy. You're more of a human being type than a tech person, but why not use the Google and those satellites in the sky to try to find this guy? Yes.
They're only good when you actually don't have overhead cover.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And I'm telling you, just kind of Jeff's point on this, he's got a lifetime of reps of not moving, and also his greatest motivation, fear. He's deathly afraid of going back to prison and spend the rest of his life there. Fear is his greatest motivator. It's why he hides so well. He's been afraid of his entire life. People said, I was on a show the other day, said he's got courage to do this. No, he doesn't. He's got no courage. This is all fear motivated. Fear is his great motivator to not move, to stay disciplined, to not come out of hiding. He's 120 pounds and 5 feet tall. This is a little person that is scared to death, hiding very, very well because he has a lifetime of doing it. And so there's no like sensationalizing how awesome he is. No, he's got great fear. And that's why he's so motivated, why he's doing so well. Yeah, the Google Earth won't work first of all, if there's no baseline in which to have him and anything. Also, he's just, when you're under a rock, Google Maps ain't going to do anything for you.
Fear is an amazing motivator as I try to work through the software. By the way, one thing you're never going to hear a Jewish guy from New Jersey say is, "When I was in the jungles of Panama." You're never going to hear me say that. But you heard Jeff Wood say that. Um, if I was there, it would be pretty. Let me tell you that right now. Phil Ramos, this is not the question I was going to ask you, but Lynn Strausser says they need to raise the prize money to like 100,000 or more. Could that backfire? Can reward money in a case like this, where you got people who think that they are Dog the Bounty Hunter going out with long arms, can it backfire? Do you have to be careful with reward money?
Yeah, it certainly can. Not only that, but it could also generate a whole lot of false leads. It could people saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm gonna take a shot, and maybe I'll get a share of that money." I'll call in and say I saw him, hiding behind this 7-Eleven or something like that. It's the money can be a motivator for the right people if there's some indication that he's got help hiding out, or he's obviously being seen by someone who is afraid to say something either to the cops or to somebody else. But I think history shows that we can offer thousands and thousands of dollars, and if the information isn't there to begin with, the money isn't going to be the incentive to get it there. It very well could backfire. I think it's not very often where a substantial amount of money is enough of a motivator for someone to pick up the phone and say, "I know where this guy is. I just, brought him a Big Mac and some fries, and he's hiding over here." But it's not very often that a large amount of money is going to lead anywhere.
Yeah, and Phil Ramos reminds me of my days in Tucson, Arizona, reporting. I used to go on ride-alongs through the desert. The desert, so much more unforgiving. I used to go out with Customs and Border Protection, and we would chase people throughout the night. That's actually what I won an Emmy Award for, not to pat myself on the back, but that's what it was for. And it was wild. It was wild to watch law enforcement officers with their night vision goggles on, chasing people through the Sonoran Desert. But the desert, man, is a brutal environment. You're not going to do too well there. Marking Time says, "Great panel. Love these guys." Robin Dreek is just dishy. Phil
dishy?
Ramos, I don't really know what that means, but I think it's delicious.
I wrote it down. Right, look it up.
That's what you do at your age, Robin Dreek. You write it down on a Post-it note.
Oh my God, you got to see everything. I got Post-its everywhere. I got stacks of Post-its from all these shows. I got stacks of Post-its on everything. It's all lined in my computers. I don't forget
Robin
anything.
Dreek, my children have no idea what a Post-it note is, and they never will. 3M is going to go out of business by the time they grow
The
up.
important ones go in the purple.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. Trust me when I tell you, my kids will never know what a Post-it note is. They'll never know what a Panamanian jungle is either. Phil Ramos, what a life. Have you written a book? Have you written a book yet, Phil Ramos? You need to. That's the
Yes.
question.
No, but there's been a couple of people approach me about doing a movie. But we all have that kind of experience. It's just a matter of finding somebody that wants to talk about it. And they said, "Well, who do you want to play your part?" I was thinking Cheech would be a guy to play.
That'd be awesome. Phil Ramos, I'm going to be your ghostwriter one day, like 7 years from now, when I can make some time to do it. But I would love to write your story. Phil Ramos, my question I've been meaning to ask you for like 10 minutes now is, you're the lead investigator on this right now. Take us behind the scenes. What is going on at the barracks at the Pennsylvania State Police headquarters, where they're trying to figure all this out? Is it complete chaos? What are they doing? How often are they meeting? What are they discussing?
Well, they're meeting all the time, and right now they're discussing the embarrassment of this guy getting through the perimeter that they had set up, and where did we screw up, and how did he get by? Well, it wasn't very hard to get by, because when you think about the number of cops that you have versus the area that they have to cover, it's something that they have to look at. How did we let him get through? But in the long run, it's not going to be that hard of a thing to do when you're dealing with someone that's used to that kind of environment and used to surviving that way. So the daily briefings are happening probably first thing in the morning, and last thing at night. And certainly the 24/7 coverage has to be more than considered. It's got to be in place, and they're beating the bushes, no pun intended. But what we've done so far hasn't worked. In fact, it's failed us. So we got to come up with something a little bit better than what we're doing right now.
And Phil, I mean, just to add on to that, are they just putting on a face right now, if you will, for the cameras? This guy, Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens, does he have to sort of act like, because he's saying, oh, he's in Pennsylvania, he's probably in northern Chester County still, where he escaped from. Does he have to do that? Do you have to portray a certain image to the media, and is it something completely different again behind closed doors?
Well, it can certainly be both. I mean, you have to show that you're confident in what your efforts are. You have to show that what you're doing you believe is the right thing to do. You can't say, well, we're just taking a shot at this, see if this works, or we don't really have anywhere to go from here. No, you can't do that, because then you're going to lose all faith in the community. Community is going to think you're a bunch of bumbling idiots, and you don't want them to think that. So whatever information they have, they're letting trickle out to the point where let's just let this out, see if it'll help. But you can bet, like with any major case investigation like this, they've got information that they're following up on that they're not letting out, and for very good reason. I mean, that's obvious why you can't let it out. So you have to portray that sense of confidence so that the public doesn't lose that sense of security in their law enforcement agency.
And there again is the most recent photos of him. You can tell he is shaved. To me, he is a Gilbert Gottfried doppelganger. I tweeted that out. Some people see it, others do not, but call me crazy. And there's the tip line. Obviously, people in that shot on the right, he looks like Gilbert Gottfried. May he rest in peace. For those who don't know who he is, he's the Aflac guy. Jeff, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to add to a couple of things that Phil mentioned. One, with the money, you also have to remember sometimes the reward money is, you're hoping to entice people who don't want to talk to the police to provide information, right? If I was hunting somebody and we weren't having much luck, we would offer money because we're hoping, somebody who knows the guy, who typically would not provide information to law enforcement, will say, ooh, I could use that money, and I need that money more than I'm friends with the guy, right? So you do have that, but you don't want to offer too much, because then, as Phil said, you've got the wrong people going out trying to hunt the guy to try and get the money, and things aren't safe. And people, again, in law enforcement, Robin, Phil, and I, we've been trained extensively on deadly force and when and where we can use our weapons, and when we don't. Civilians don't have that training, and even if you have people from the military come in, it's a different policy. So you just can't go out willy-nilly and, oh, I see him, I shoot him, right? That's not legal. So there's pros and cons to both. And then also, as Phil said, I have a hate-love relationship with the press. I'm sure everyone does in some aspects in law enforcement, because we see so much that is not reported properly. We see things that screw up. I still remember seeing things on the Boston Marathon bombing where we get the photograph of the detonation device. Hey, we think we've got this part. It comes back to us, and then, like law enforcement, we have our sources. Press has their sources. Within minutes, we're seeing the same photographs up on CNN, Fox News, on that 24-hour news cycle right after the Boston Marathon bombing. And there's a reason why we want to share certain things, but there's a reason why we don't. Because if we share everything, now we're giving people information that they don't need, but more importantly, that could hurt us in our hunt. And so when you have these press releases, yes, we need to give some things that we can hopefully get some information back from the public. But at the same point, if we give everybody everything, he also may get to see it, and now he knows what's going on, and that makes it even harder for us to find. And so there is a a love-hate relationship for investigators and the press.
And also,
And
if you have vigilantes going in there, you're going to generate a whole lot of other leads coming in on them, which is going to flood the zone with false leads because they saw an armed guy walking down the street that they thought was Cavalcante when it's actually just a vigilante. So that's another reason for it too. You're reversing it.
And I have a love-hate relationship with the media, and I am or was the media, so I totally get it. Stelviri says too much media is not good for anybody. Haha, look at me. Well, look at me too. Phil Ramos. So he showed up at some acquaintances' homes. They keep using this word acquaintance. And one thing, by the way, about the media, if one media outlet uses a word, every other media outlet's going to use that same word because everyone just parrots everybody. So I don't know if these are friends, family members, but they keep using the word acquaintances. But there were people in the chat earlier who said, how is he showing up at acquaintances' homes, at these people's houses, without police being staged outside of these homes? Should police be doing a better job of knowing who he's connected to and surveilling those homes, in essence?
Well, I don't think there's enough cops to do that. I mean, you could certainly make the argument that, well, there should be a surveillance on everybody's house that this guy's ever had any contact with, but where are you going to get the manpower to do that? And, you run into an issue of, why are you sitting at my house and not sitting at the other guy's house that knows him better than I do? So that's a lot of second guessing by people that have very limited experience or exposure to law enforcement tactics. I mean, on the surface, it sounds like it's a great idea. Let's go sit on everybody's front porch that this guy's ever had any contact with, but that's just not feasible. You just can't do that. You certainly find out who he might be going to, but without knowing any more than what you know about him or his associates, how do you justify that? You just can't. That would be like, every phone call that comes in about my neighbor. I think I saw him looking through the back window of somebody else's house, and he might have a gun. Then you expect the cops to react to everything like that. It wouldn't be something that could easily be done, nor should it be. We don't live in that kind of society where somebody can pick up the phone and say, hey, this guy's a friend of Cavalcante and he might be hiding him out. So get over there and put some pressure on him and find out where he's at. You can't do that.
Robin Dreek, those are all excellent points. It comes down to manpower. You can't be everywhere at all times. But Robin Dreek, someone made a comment earlier, and I'm still trying to figure out this new chat, and I'm trying to chase down some of these comments, and I'm not quick enough. So they disappear a lot quicker than they used to. I could use some Post-it notes.
That's
Might have
right.
to send me some. But someone made a comment earlier, just trying to weed him out basically by teasing him with Coca-Cola and Doritos. But it kind of struck me as sort of interesting because we are all creatures of comfort. Obviously, Danelo Calvacante can be more uncomfortable than the rest of us, but at some point, is he just going to fade? I mean, people keep saying also we're going to find this guy dead eventually. It's going to take a lot for him to die of natural causes out there. But at some point, is he just going to say, okay, I can't take this anymore. I can't take eating, leaves and dirt or whatever he's doing. And will the issue of comfort play a factor in him coming out?
That's a great question. I mean, before he wound up stealing that van, I was starting to hypothesize to myself that he's kind of gone through this cycle, this arc of escape to survive to resolve to death. I was kind of curious where he was in that arc, and I was thinking because no one had seen him, he hasn't had any contact, he hasn't had any food, we were assuming no water, that he was kind of resolved to dying under a rock and we're going to find him dead one day. Next thing you know, he's in this change of clothes, shaved, and in a van taken off. And I'm like, wow. Again, much more resilient, much more resourceful than we give him credit for. So I still have no idea. I think he's going to keep surprising us because when you are living in total fear, you have reps of suffering that we can't, and Jeff hit this before too. When you've never walked a mile in someone else's shoes, it's hard to imagine the choices they'd make. And there's a number of those things going on right here. One, where he grew up, how he grew up, the poverty that he's surrounded by. Who knows if he did? I saw the comment on the chat before that he comes from a family with a lot of money. It's how he got the legal passports and things like that. I have no idea. I didn't read any of that, but he's surrounded by it. And it's hard to imagine those things. That's why the greatest trackers in the world are very good, because they think like them. Phil mentioned this earlier. When you think like the bad guy, it's easier to find the bad guy, because you're kind of strategizing, what would you do in those situations if I was literally him, having lived all those types of circumstances. Very challenging to see. But hopefully his data points, again, just go to what we've observed so far, will continue in the fact that he will try to find vulnerabilities in organizations, vehicles, institutions. Maybe if we left a trap of Coca-Cola someplace, and then they'll start dragging a little string or something, or left the car unlocked that you got a tracker on. I don't know. We generally don't like doing those things because they're fraught with their own kind of issues, but that's his Achilles heel. His Achilles heel, he's going to keep trying to reach out for resources to get out of this area. And it's on law enforcement to reach out to them first, or at least have a relationship with them, so that when he does, that's when the net's going to circle on him.
Dom's mom, too kind. Her son's birthday, same day as mine, so she's got to be cool, and so does a kid. 725. I don't get how STS has the literal best guess on a daily basis, covers all the big stories from a non-biased, fact-driven perspective. You got to do my PR. Yet only has 66,000 subs. You should at least have 1 million plaque, in my opinion. Thank you. We only went true crime all the time back in November, less than a year, so we are moving quickly. Coming to take over true crime. We're going to do it. And along the way, we're going to make a movie about Phil Ramos. We'll write a book for Jeff Wood. Robin Dreeks already got 50 books, but a rising tide lifts all ships. So I'm going to bring all these guys and STS Nation on the journey. So hopefully it continues in an upward trajectory. The software is definitely taking years off my life. Ask the COE. She's yelling at me for being crabby. That's just how it goes when I'm stressed out. But things are starting to smooth out. The man who is always smooth, Jeff Wood, retired FBI special agent out of Boston. You heard him say he was almost on a flight on one of those 9/11 planes. Thank God he was not. We need Jeff Wood around, as we did all those other people who lost their lives as well. It was a horrific day 22 years ago. Agent Wood did, on gangs and gang violence. He's a seasoned investigator, and both of Jeff's parents proudly served in Vietnam, where they met and eventually had, as I like to say, baby Jeff. Baby Jeff, how does this all end? Do you think this guy is going back to prison, or is he going to take a bullet from police to end this 12-day search that could go on for God knows how long?
Everyone's touched base, and I think Robin has made some good points about he doesn't want to go back to prison, but it's going to boil down to when the police find him and if he's armed or not. If he's armed, it's going to be very hard to say, I can capture a guy. He's got a gun. He's got a knife. And I always laugh when people say, can't you shoot the guy in the leg? When the situation is stressed, I'm not aiming at the leg, because the leg is this big. And you look at most officer involved shootings, most bullets never hit their targets. So unless I train every day and I'm the greatest shot on a moving target to hit something this big, and it may not even be this big around because he's so skinny, right? We're trained to shoot center mass to stop somebody from doing what it is to cause us to shoot in the first place. Because this area right here is the biggest target, and something I should be able to hit easier than my arm, my leg. So if he's, just because he has a knife, if he starts to come at you, they're going to end up shooting him, right? And just because, and it doesn't mean because I shoot him, he's automatically dead. I think the studies have shown, actually, I know the studies have shown over 80% of the people who are ever shot die or live. Over 80% of the people who are shot live. So you've got very good chances of surviving being shot. But, the issue is if there's 3 police officers and he starts running at us with a knife, we're trained. You shoot him till he stops doing what it is that caused us to shoot. 3 police officers can shoot easily 8 bullets apiece, hit him several times. But if he's not armed, and we come up on him, yeah, we're going to be able to take him alive because there's going to be 3, 4 of us, and we're going to grab him. The fight might be on, but as everyone who ever worked with me knows, we fight until we get the cuffs on. And once the cuffs are on, then you get him medical attention if he needs medical attention. If not, you brush him off, you take him to the PD, and you book him. Right? So those are the 2 options that are going to happen, and when they find him, and he may be able to get himself a good sharp stick. That's still a deadly weapon in my mind. And if you come at me with a deadly stick, I'm going to use that stick. Can hurt me and cause serious injury or kill me. I'm shooting you. So it depends on what he has on him that will ultimately decide on whether or not he's taken alive or if he's injured and ultimately killed.
Brusty, is Jeff Woods single? The answer to that is a negativo. He is not. Sorry about that, all you members of STS Nation. Burning Queen making me very happy. I love the new angle on the new set as well. My favorite part, my idea, the suspended in air lampshades. I don't know where I came up with that, but I like it. And we've got to tighten up the head-on shot. We're going to work on that. Robin Dreek, I should have asked this question a long time ago, but before we get there, remind me to ask you about the bag he's carrying. Robin Dreek is a best-selling author, a professional speaker, a trainer, an executive coach, a podcast host, a Marine Corps officer, a retired FBI special agent, chief of the Counterintelligence Behavior Analysis Program. One of his many jobs was recruiting spies. He's the author of The Code of Trust, and It's Not All About Me. Robin Dreek, there's a dog barking. I love it. He's been carrying this bag and he's been spotted with it. You think he got his hands on a weapon, if you had to guess? And by a weapon, I mean a firearm. What do you think he has in there? And your final thoughts?
Whatever he needs to survive, basic supplies. I think if he had anything more than that, who would have used it? I think he's been using everything at his disposal that we've seen. Again, pure conjecture. I'm hoping he doesn't have a weapon because, as Jeff was saying, it'd be great for everyone involved to take him alive and watch him die behind bars. I mean, that's what everyone's going for. And I think that's got a decent probability unless he dies of the elements at some point. But what's in that bag? I think just pure basic survival stuff.
Shout out, by the way, to Marina. I just got overridden here. STS Nation for Life. That's my gang. Followed by... What's going on? I can't click on Marina all of a sudden, but shout out to Marina. We missed you. She is in the south of Spain. And Brenda Taylor says, Joel, don't worry so much about the new set. It will all come together. Yes, it will. A man who has got a resume the length of a CVS receipt. That is Detective Phil Ramos. He is a retired senior homicide detective with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. 35 years of service. Last 15 years of his service was in homicide, 12 years undercover in narcotics and organized crimes. He infiltrated the Cuban mob. He did a lot of crazy things. 3-time Officer of the Year in native Las Vegas. Not many of those. And Tupac. He was there for his autopsy. I never know to say Tupac or Tupac. Someone yelled at me one time and said it's Tupac. So I will say Tupac. He also rides his Harley. Phil Ramos, you've been around this world many, many years. Is this guy going to go down in a hail of bullets, do you think? Or is he going to come up with those arms raised and go back to prison?
Well, let's hope that it's the latter, but Jeff was spot on. If this guy doesn't pose a threat, the cops aren't going to shoot him. I mean, that's the only reason you shoot somebody is to stop the threat. You don't shoot him because he's an escaped murderer. You shoot him to stop the threat that he's presenting at that very moment. So, I think he's going to come out with his hands up and say, I'm hungry and thirsty. Let's hope that he doesn't put the officers in that position of having to shoot him. Nobody wants to do that, but that's going to be his call.
Yep.
Huge thanks to our best guest as always. We're going to stay on the story until he gets caught. So we're going to find some more best guests tomorrow who are experienced in this sort of thing. We've had Lenny DePaul on recently. He ran the largest fugitive task force in the United States of America. He had a lot of interesting things. I'm going to reach back out to him. But thanks so much to Robin, Phil, and Jeff Wood. We're going to be back in exactly 30 minutes. Going to do another show, I don't know how, on Alec Murdaugh and this whole controversy with Becky Hill and whether or not Alec Murdaugh is going to get a retrial. I have a feeling the only person who's going to be present for that show is going to be my mom. And someone is asking, Elf is, where is the cutout of Carm? Where am I going here? That is Carm right behind me. She has her own painting, and we're going to start to go wider.
I see
Tighter
it.
on her. By the way, that is my beloved Mabel Rose right there, and my dad's book on the table. So there are a lot of very important things to me in this crazy set that my mother screamed at me for. She said to keep things simple, and I said I would never allow that. So shout out to the best guests until 7 o'clock. I was going to say until tomorrow. We've got 30 more minutes to go. Love you, America. Love you, Virginia. Love you, Las Vegas. Love you, Boston and Alabama and everywhere in between. See ya.
See ya.
Yeah.